Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode, another Facebook Live here on blackdoctor.org. I, of course, am your host, Ellis Dean, and you are watching uh, Kidneys 101 with the People's Nephrologist. And so, y'all remember, we did this about a month and a half. It's been a minute since we had this show, but we have got a great show for you tonight, and that is Dr. Vanessa Grubbs, also known as the People's Nephrologist. You can find her on YouTube. So go there. She's got a wonderful kind of this catalog of videos there on her YouTube channel under the People's Nephrologist. So you can get, and they're shorts right there. They're not long videos, not long form videos, but they're short information all about our kidney health. And so, but we've got a great conversation for you with her tonight. We're going to be talking about the kidney conversations every family should have. And I'm going to say right now it says every family, but I'm going to say every Black family should have, because we're talking to Black folks tonight. All right.
Yes.
So that's the way we're going to be doing it. So kidney conversation every Black family should have, particularly as we're moving into the holiday season where families going to be spending some time together. I know we're going to be talking about fun and kids and everything and who's doing what and all this other stuff. What's little man doing what? Let's have some real conversations about our health. And so we're going to give you the language. We're going to say what you should be talking about, how you should be talking about it, the questions you should be asking, what you need to know so you and your family can have better kidney health. But before we bring on Dr. Grubs, a couple things I need for you to do. Number one is let us know where you're watching from. We'd like to know where people are watching us from all over the country. So please let us know where you're watching from by dropping that in the comment section, and we'll give you and your city and state a shout out. Number two, if you know somebody that needs this information, please tag them or share this on your page. We got to get this information out to as many people as possible, and it's up to you to help us do that. So that tag a friend, share it on your page. And then number three, if you have any questions about what we're going to be discussing tonight, please drop that in the comment section and we will get your questions asked and answered, because as we're talking to the people's nephrologists, this is all about the people, and we got to get your questions asked and answered. Finally, I want to say that any information that we share tonight is for information purposes only. If you're under the care of a nephrologist or of your primary care physician, do not change anything in your treatment plan that you had that conversation. This is for you to spark that conversation and say, well, I saw this program, doc, so y'all can have that conversation. But please don't make any changes until you have the conversation. This is for information purposes only, to get you better informed so you can be a better advocate for yourself or your family member that's dealing with any kidney issues. So with that being said, I got all the particulars out of the way. Let's bring on Dr. Grubs. How you doing?
Oh, good. Thanks for having me back.
No, we're happy to have you back. We're happy to be here. And this is a great conversation to have. And you know the situation. I got Thurston Taylor showing in from North Carolina. What's up?
Hey, home state for me.
That's right. You are from North Carolina. You're in North Carolina. You're a North Carolinian native there. So shout out to folks from home state there. So keep that coming in. In full disclosure, because y'all know me here and you've been with me for the past several years, I am transparent as a come, and this conversation is personal for me tonight because my father has been in renal failure for a number of years, for at least a decade, and he's been in dialysis, and currently is in the hospital. And he hasn't been dialyzed for a number of weeks, since November 20th. So that is a number of weeks right now. And so, as many of you might know, the longer that if you're supposed to have dialysis, the longer that you don't have it, toxins build up in the body, and things can start to go haywire. And eventually, without dialysis, it can become fatal. And so, it is this conversation is important for you and your family, but it's also important for me, and there's a reason why we're here. And so just want to lead with that. With the elephant in the room, that's where we are. So Dr. Grubs, welcome. I'm glad we're having this conversation, kidney conversations that every Black family should have. So I'm going to start off with a softball question. Simple question is, what do Black people need to know about kidney health?
That's a softball question. Okay. Well, I think that's a hard one to answer, and it depends on kind of what stage of life and health you're at. I think most of us want to prevent any kidney issues at all, but that can be hard for us because we don't like to change the way we do things. I think in this vein of being transparent, I'll say that I started this medication a few weeks ago that I was hoping that was going to help me with my hot flashes.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm, I'm of that age. And I was warned that it could make my blood pressure go high. And, I don't have high blood pressure. And
Right.
so I was taking the medicine for like 5, 6 days. And I said, oh, let me take my blood pressure. And again, this is not something that you're going to feel. So
Mhm.
people need to check in on things. It's not like you can just know it. Um, and my blood pressure was high, like
Mhm.
really high, like 160 over 110 high.
Mm.
And I was like, let me stop this medication. I will have a hot flash instead of dealing with this, right? And
Right.
then after a few days off the medicine, my blood pressure was still high. And it does take a few days for a medication to be out your system. So I tried to be patient with it, but part of me kind of panicked a little bit and thought, oh my goodness, am I going to have to start taking all the advice that I give to patients? I'm gonna have to cut back on that bourbon,
Right. Right.
fries, and
Right.
you know, salt. Some of my favorite things. So,
Right.
uh, but thankfully, my blood pressure did return back to normal. But I say all of that as a reminder that one, we have to go get checked out. As I
Yeah.
said the last time, if there's any kind of particularly diabetes or high blood pressure in your family, you should get checked out to see get screened for those things and to get screened for any kidney disease, even early kidney disease, with a blood test and the urine test, and do everything you can to prevent things from happening, particularly like trying to eat a healthier diet, exercise, just all of the things that can prevent high blood pressure and diabetes, which are the major things that can damage the kidneys. And people always want to know, is there a special food, or is there something they should stop eating or stop drinking that will protect their kidneys? And I try to help people understand it doesn't work like that. There's no like magic pill. And
Yeah.
truthfully, when a nephrologist tells you that there's certain foods you should stop eating altogether, that's because your kidneys can't handle it. And people may have heard of a renal diet, and that's really something that's very low in potassium, very low in phosphorus, usually reserved for people who are either on dialysis or very close to having dialysis.
Right.
So you want nothing to do with the renal diet. That's all, so many wonderful things have a high phosphorus and potassium content,
Right.
like chocolate and fries and tropical fruits, and it's just so many things. The list is very, very long. So you don't want that. So try to have everything in moderation, including moderation, yeah, before, live your life, but everything has to be in moderation to avoid some of these complications. So,
So
yeah.
you mentioned and there is a relationship between hypertension and chronic kidney disease. Can it help our audience understand what is that relationship between hypertension and chronic kidney disease, and then if you want to include diabetes in there, because um, the all of the stuff when Dr. Google said, and I'm gonna say that Dr. Google says the two biggest
Hmm.
conditions that lead to chronic kidney disease are hypertension and diabetes. So number one, is that true? And then two, let's talk about that relationship so people can really understand. You're not just dealing with your blood pressure, you're dealing with potentially the reason why you need to control that blood pressure that
Hmm.
potentially could lead to chronic kidney disease.
That is true that high blood pressure and diabetes account for 2/3 of the chronic kidney disease that we do see in this country. And the way they can damage the kidneys is different. With high blood pressure, that's a blood pressure, that's a blood vessel issue. And the kidneys are, there's just so many different types of blood vessels, smaller and smaller, and they can all be damaged. And high blood pressure can definitely cause damage to any of the blood vessels and make it harder for the kidneys to do their job, which is to filter the blood. And that's where diabetes can come in terms of damaging those filters. And so that the filters, glomeruli is the medical name for it. They can damage the holes in the filter so that protein can leak through. And the protein in and of itself is a sign of damage. It can also cause more damage. And so that's why the urine test is important as well, to check for protein in the urine, particularly albumin, and the creatinine as well in the urine. I remember I didn't say that last time because, you have to account for how concentrated the P is. So it's urine, creatinine, and albumin to kind of account for that.
So what are those levels? I know I had my with the family history, of course, of hypertension, as well as on both sides. Mom and dad had hypertension. Dad went into renal failure. Mother has not gone into renal failure, so that's a good thing. So I became hypersensitive. So we're talking about kidney conversations that every family should have. Number one is you should know what that hypertensive history is in your family. And is it potential, especially if you're young enough, you haven't developed hypertension, then you should know that, hey, there's a family history of it. But what are those levels that they should be looking for, that they should be concerned about when it comes to albumin and creatinine? Those fancy words, but what are those levels that should keep them feeling safe about their kidney health?
Yeah, I recently posted a video specifically about the urine albumin on my YouTube channel, Real Kidney Talk with the People's Nephrologist. And me making that video came about because I tried to communicate through the MyChart electronic medical record about a patient's lab results. And I thought I was reassuring him about his urine test, because normal is less than 30 milligrams per gram of creatinine. That's the albumin. And above 300 milligrams is a different level of risk. So his level was around 100. And so I'm telling him that this is an early sign of kidney damage. And we can talk more about it at your next visit. It's related to your blood pressure predominantly not being under good control. And yeah, he had diabetes too. So he was freaking out because in his mind, the number 100 is more than three times higher than normal. And so I did the whole video to explain to people that I do get that. And yes, having the protein in your urine is associated with developing your kidney disease getting worse, is associated with just overall mortality and heart disease. So it is important. So it's not to just blow it off. I give some more specifics on the videos. I hope folks will check it out. But you have to consider the range of things. So sure, less than 30 is normal, and above 300 is a different level of risk. But some people have thousands of milligrams of protein in their urine. So it's all relative to what the possibilities are. And in terms of the blood tests, as I said, when we talked before, there's a range of what normal is, and it really depends on the person, how old the person is, male or female, how muscular they might be, what kind of diet they're eating. So those are all the details of interpretation is what the doctor is for. but I do want to say in terms of what do you do about it? Again, it's the controlling the high blood pressure and the diabetes. There
Right.
are some specific medications that are particularly good at helping to lower the blood pressure within the kidney. So those filters, the holes have a chance to heal. And those are the ACE inhibitors and the ARBs. And people should, definitely talk with their doctors about if they're appropriate for them or not. And most recently, there's a whole new group of medications that have come out in the last few years that are particularly helpful at protecting the kidneys and the heart, even though they are directly diabetes medications. So there's a lot of different ones. I won't go into the names of them all, but just ask. I encourage folks to ask their doctors about the SGLT2 inhibitors. I might not get that right, but it's a lot of different medicines. And I'm only remembering brand names right now, which I hate to do, but to call those, but they usually end in a gliptin. GLIPTIN. So it's a whole class of medications that you and your doctor, primary care, or nephrologist can decide if they're appropriate for you.
And I think it's appropriate to say that absolutely there are medications that are available for that are, and they're getting better, right? They're getting more precise. Maybe that's the best term. At the same time, you have to be proactive, right? And there's things that you can do that and I say to people all the time when they ask me, I say, look, every time you put something in your mouth, you're making a health decision, right? And so whether that is, if it's a candy bar, a cookie, a hamburger, or a salad, every time you put something in your mouth, you're making a health decision one way or the other. So tonight's conversation is really about those health conversations, right? So how do you have those health conversations with your family? So the first thing it seems like we should say is, what is the family history of hypertension and diabetes? Have to understand that. I know I've got a double whammy of hypertension coming my way. And so therefore I have become hypersensitive to my blood pressure level. So I've got my blood pressure cup literally here in my drawer that when I sit down at my desk in the morning, I take my blood pressure. I want to make sure that it is within those ranges that are considered normal. What are some of those? How do we have those conversations with our family? I don't know, especially as people of color, we tend to be more guarded when it comes to our health history. How do we have those conversations in a way that's both meaningful and not intrusive?
Well, I don't know what to say about the intrusive part. I think it's important that if in families we're close, we need to know about what's going on with one another's health, and it's important to make sure that we are knowledgeable about what is important to pay attention to, and ask our family members, like, are you getting checked out? You definitely should get checked out once a year for these things, because we got this in our family and that. Of course, the conversations on the other end of the spectrum about dialysis and all of that kind of thing is, that's a very different set of conversations. But most of us are trying to prevent and or slow down the progression so we never get to those types of conversations. So yeah, we do. We have to just ask. We have to start, and it's terrible, and it happens in my family too, where it's like, who had such and such had cancer, breast cancer, and or whatever it is, but then you go to the doctor and they're asking you about your family history for these very reasons, to know what you're at risk of, particularly even outside of kidney stuff. If certain things run in your family, should we be screening you for that so that we can catch things early and prevent them from becoming, these horrible things that we really have no control over?
And I know the last time we were together in person, we were at a talk at the NMA, which is the National Medical Association, the largest and oldest Black doctor medical association in the country. And we were at a talk talking about APO1, right, which is a gene that seems to be in Black folks, that can lead to chronic kidney disease. So should everyone, I guess the question is, should everyone run out and go get genetic testing, or should that be something that is more relegated to people that have a family history of chronic kidney disease?
Well, I as you recall, I did stand up in that conference and speak about the issue, because there's a lot of emphasis that's been placed on APOL1 as this kind of Black people thing. And, I personally have this, beef with people trying to attribute a lot of biological meaning to race, because race is something the colonizer made up, right? They're so that they could do everything that has been happening since, the first white man met the first person of color, right? So, so it's not just about Black; it's about geography, and it's similar to how sickle cell disease affects a number of Black people, and it's sub-Saharan Africa, but it's for sickle cell, it's also other parts of the world. So that's another reason why it's important for folks not to just think of something as a Black disease. And initially, like sickle cell is protective of having the trait, is protective of malaria. Having two copies of the variants of the normal gene will end up with sickle cell. APOL1 is similar in that people having, there's one variant, there's two different types of variant. If you have one of these variants, then you are protected from sleeping sickness, which is caused by the tsetse fly in sub-Saharan Africa, and it can be quite deadly. But if you have two copies of this, two variants of this gene, then it increases your risk of developing kidney failure. And at the same time, it's not like if you have two copies, you're going to get kidney failure. Right. So, it's important for people to understand that, like the general population, there's a 2% chance that over your lifetime, you will get kidney failure. If you have, oh goodness, I'm trying to remember these numbers. If you have one copy, then it's a slightly increased risk. And if you have two copies, it's a little bit more. And I want to say somewhere around, like, I'm not going to get this right, I should have reviewed all of this, but more like in the 5 to 10%. So it's not a definite. And roughly half of Black people in the US will have one copy. I myself have one copy, right? And the only reason I found out was because in the process of working on my second book, I wanted to, it was one of the topics was about trying to make race this biologically meaningful thing. And so I did the 23andMe, and they tested me for it, and that's how I found out. So, and it just goes to show that even though it does slightly increase your risk, I'm over 18. Yeah, I'm almost 19 years out from giving away a kidney, right? So, and I'm still in relatively good health. I still haven't checked my cystatin C that I mentioned on the last one, which is, I'm getting off tangent, but cystatin C is kind of a specialized test that's not affected by as many different things as the creatinine, the blood creatinine test is that we use to estimate kidney function. So if it's kind of like a borderline creatinine, I've often ordered the cystatin C to really get a better sense, a better estimation of what a person's kidney function is. But so actually, you know, I'm thinking about these numbers. It's probably like 0.22% and then 4%. But don't quote me on that one. I've written about it and spoken about it, but yeah, I can't hold on.
No, it's all good. But I think what we need to recognize is that people say, okay, look, so number one, don't freak out about it.
Mm-hmm.
If you get genetic testing and you realize you have one or even two of the APOL1 gene, don't freak out. There's a stress. And from what I understand, that there's some sort of stress that kicks it in. But if that stressor doesn't happen, then you can live.
There's a lot we don't know about it, but the things that we do know is that it explains about 1/3 of hypertensive kidney disease. So it really has nothing to do with all the other things that can cause kidney failure. Like it has nothing to do with diabetes related kidney failure, right? So that's a small portion of a small portion of a small portion. So I think we, you know, get so excited about these genetic things that we tend to make them a much bigger deal than they play out in reality. And at the end of the day, it still all goes back to get screened, because you'll have a lot of protein in your urine if you're at risk for this.
So there's a great question coming in from Donna that's been watching us from Pittsburgh, and she's asking, what is better? I know you're like, better is always relative. Hemodialysis or peritoneal dialysis?
Peritoneal. It depends on the person. And some people will have a preference for the other, one or the other. I will say that there was a study, it's been some years ago, of nephrologists that asked them, if a transplant was not readily available and you were facing kidney failure, what modality would you choose? And I want to say 93% of them said they would choose to do dialysis at home, whether it be peritoneal dialysis or home hemodialysis. But what is strange is that in this country, most people are on in-center hemodialysis, and where it's 3 times a week. And I think that has a lot to do with just kind of, you know, our mindset here, people thinking that it's automatically better if it costs a lot more, if there's techs and nurses around. But personally, most nephrologists would pick to do dialysis at home, because it's a little bit, you're getting a little bit of kidney replacement at least 6 days a week. Sometimes people do it 7 days a week, whereas with the in-center hemodialysis, it's the yo-yo up and down, since you're only going 3 times a week.
Right.
So a lot of people nephrologists are, you know, very much type A, so they want to have that control and do things at home. And I think we make people feel like they can't do home dialysis, which is not true. One of my colleagues said, I didn't like a lot of what he said, but this one thing I did like, and I keep with me, is if you can brush your teeth and follow a recipe, then you can do dialysis at home. And none of it is easy, but I do think people do feel more even, and there's less fluid and food restrictions when you're doing the home dialysis. I think it's terrible that you know, on the list of what we should be doing better in this country, some of the other you know, similar countries, they have it set up so that a nurse goes to the home for elderly, our elders who might not be strong enough to lift bags of fluid for peritoneal dialysis, or might not be able to see well enough to make all the connections. They have a nurse that comes out to them and hooks them up to what's called a cycler, which is a machine that you program to run the fluid into the abdominal cavity, which is basically between the space between all of your internal organs and the skin. There's like a space there where your body functions as a filter, and the machine is programmed to run the fluid in, how long to let it stay there, and then when to drain it out. And then the nurse comes back in the morning to do that. In this country, we won't pay for that, and so people have to basically have a family member do that, which everybody can't afford to do that. Everybody can't afford to have somebody to be their caregiver at home. So and that's another reason why a lot of people end up doing in-center hemodialysis. In terms of how long a person can live, studies suggest there's no difference. So it is really about choice. And if from a society perspective, it would be better if more people were doing home dialysis. But as it stands, only about 10% of folks on dialysis in this country are doing dialysis at home. And like I said, it has to do with a lot of different things.
Well, yeah, it is, and it's definitely individually defined, and so again, as I said at the top of the program, is full disclosure. My father's on dialysis, but he was going to a center, and part of that reason, and they told me when I talked to them about it, they said, well, at the end of each year, we do a patient assessment, and what they, and I agreed with them in terms of. It does require some discipline in order to be able to do it on your own, to be able to do that function. And we knew he wasn't going to do that, right? He wasn't going to take care of it and do it at home as he should. And so that it was better for him to go into a center. Now, if you have somebody, if you know of somebody, if you've got somebody, your family member that does have that discipline, that does have that ability to be able to do that, then again, as Dr. Grubbs is talking about, that might be the better case for them, because they're going to get that ongoing filtering from the dialysis versus just 3 times a week, and you kind of you lessen yo-yo effect of the dialysis. And so we there's definitely, so you do have to do whether that person has to do an honest assessment of themselves, or if y'all sit down as a family, you have to kind of do an honest assessment of what their abilities are, what they cannot do, what they will or what they won't do, because that might be different than what they can and cannot do. So there's out there. I want to make that distinction. They might be able to do it, but will they do it is a different question. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I've seen people that are absolutely miserable on the home peritoneal dialysis and thrive on the in-center hemodialysis setting, and vice versa. So it really is a very person dependent.
Yeah, Yvonne's watching on our YouTube, and she said, viewing from DC with more kidney dialysis centers than grocery stores. And that is a reality, particularly in communities of color.
Yep.
We see a lot of dialysis centers. It's big business. It is a multi-million, probably close to billion.
Yeah, multi-billion-dollar business.
Multi-billion-dollar business. And so really that brings into that other part of that family conversations when your doctor and nephrologist, primary care physician starts talking to you about dialysis. Should they just immediately accept that, or should they go get a second opinion? Is there something, because I know there's stages, right? When it comes to kidney disease. And so, and typically, and correct me if I'm wrong here, dialysis, when you get to that stage 4, that's when you start having the dialysis conversation.
Honestly, I would say we have some of these conversations too early. Okay. And I say this for several reasons. One, the National average for starting someone on dialysis is a GFR of 10. That's the glomerular filtration rate, which is an estimate of how much blood your kidneys are filtering every minute. Above 60, the kidneys can do everything that they're supposed to do normally, which is a lot of different things.
Right.
And 10 is the national average. But clinically, when I was practicing nephrology, most patients didn't, their bodies didn't need dialysis until that 5 to 8 mark. So what I found, when I was in training, it was taught to us to start having these conversations when a person is in stage 4 at a level of, say, 20. Now, I agree with it to some degree. It's important to have the conversation in terms of, okay, you might be a candidate for kidney transplant. We need to get you on the list now, but we're not going to, get you ready and, prepare for dialysis until you're down to, like that 10 and declining, because I've seen us put like a fistula in somebody and it's 5 years later, they're still not on dialysis because thankfully things go really slowly. If all things are being relatively well controlled. But I do think, and this is a conversation I feel like we definitely don't have enough in the Black community for lots of reasons. And I think one of the reasons is we have this kind of like almost a suffering mentality that we're supposed to suffer, and we're not intended to have things be better. And so people are afraid of just the notion of transplant. But people who have a kidney transplant, it's not all rainbows and cotton candy, but they can hope to live life a lot better than somebody on dialysis, and a lot at almost as long as just the regular population. So and if you get on that waiting list at 20, then you might actually never have to do time on dialysis, because how long you're on that list is one of the biggest factors into when it's your turn to get a deceased donor kidney. I feel like people, like Black people in particular, and other communities of color, we tend to have all these like superstitions, like if I acknowledge it, then that makes it more real and that makes it happen. And
Right.
so I've spent so much time trying to say, no, just go to the appointment. Just go to the appointment so they can put you on the list. And then there's nothing else to do. I'll keep taking care of you. We'll keep focusing on slowing down the worsening of your kidney disease. And if you get down to that, like, 10, 12 range, and I see it decreasing, because I've seen people sit at 10 to 12 GFR for years. It really is not, it's not any kind of absolute. But when you mentioned the whole second opinion,
Yeah.
of course, always get somebody else's opinion. But, I remember taking care of this young man. He was probably 35 when I met him. And by the time he was 40, his kidneys were down at the point that, man, we really gotta, start getting ready for this. He was not somebody that was a candidate for a transplant. And he said, wait, well, I want to get a second opinion, because he felt okay. And I'm like, all right, man, go ahead and get your second opinion. But for him, it was more of a stalling tactic, because honestly, sometimes there's a little dark humor in medicine. I'm like, the janitor could have told you, like, looked at your labs and seen all that red, like, nah, man, you need dialysis, because
Right.
this is bad. But it took him several months to go get his second opinion, and of course they agreed, yeah, your GFR is 6, you should get ready. And he still kept putting it off, and he didn't make it. He died at 40, died in his sleep. And to me, it was an example of how our fear can get in the way of us living not a perfect life. There definitely going to be some adjustments, but living and being here to enjoy all of the things outside of dialysis. So that to me was just so sad to see that happen.
You're bringing up a good point, there's because number one, and I'm going to say that there is avoidance is not a plan, right? So avoiding like if you got a family history of high blood pressure, avoiding getting your blood pressure taken is leaving you in the dark about what
Exactly.
happening, and then you could end up having not only having high blood pressure and all of the conditions that can come from having hypertension, stroke, aneurysm, all that stuff, including chronic kidney disease, by just taking it and say, "Oh, I've got high blood pressure. Let me deal with that." Right, and so
exactly.
Number one, avoiding you can't do that. Number two, the transplant, right, and so there is, particularly amongst communities of color, there is this negativity or natural distrust that comes from, and that distrust is real. It's based on
well earned. Yes.
historical evidence, right? So let me
yes,
just say that for the record, there is a real distrust, and is genuine and is earned. At the same time, when we're talking about help people understand what that process is like to get on the list, and are there some tips or techniques that they can engage in that will help them in this process of getting a kidney transplant?
Yes. I think it is so true that all of the distrust, and so how important it is to I'm sorry, I just saw the comment, high blood pressure clubs, but
I love it though. I love it. Like this.
So how important it is to find a doctor that you do trust. And I know that's hard. There's certainly not enough Black doctors around, which is the whole reason why I have a whole nonprofit organization to, try to stop the system from pushing out Black doctors for all kinds of frivolous reasons. That's Black Doc Village. You can find us at blackdocvillage.org. And but aside from that, so it's hard to find a doctor that you can trust, which is another reason why I make these videos, the Real Kidney Talk, with the people's nephrologist, so that people can, hopefully see me as someone that they can believe, someone that they can trust, and I'm delivering information in a very real way. And I have a video on how people can increase their chances for getting placed on the kidney waiting list. And I can say more about that, but first I want to make sure that we do have some conversation about living donor transplant. And I think we tend not to have those conversations at all. Of course, getting a transplant from somebody that's still, walking around is going to be a healthier, longer lasting kidney than from somebody who's passed away. But we hesitate to ask people in our lives because we don't want to be a burden, or we're thinking that it's going to be so harmful for their health and all of these kind of things. But I really encourage people to educate themselves about what the reality is. And I get that it's hard to ask someone something like that, but that's where you have like your representative to kind of put the word out there for you, whether it be at whatever organizations you're a member of, or churches, that kind of thing. What I tell people, white folks don't hesitate. They'll be all over Facebook with their stories and, asking anybody they come in contact with, because they feel like they deserve the best of everything. And we need to feel that too. So do we. We deserve the best of everything. And, this society has us feeling like we're supposed to settle for just kind of what's left. And this kind of suffering mentality is not doing us any favors. And at the same time, I get it. My own husband, he didn't he by the time I came along in his life, he didn't want to ask anybody. He didn't even want to accept me saying that I wanted to give him a kidney, because of what if something bad happens to you, or
Right.
all of these kinds of things. But anybody who wants to donate, they want to donate, and they are healthy enough to donate. So that's the thing. If you go through the whole process and you can donate, for me, I no regrets. I do it again in a heartbeat. But of course, it's hard for a lot of us to be donors to people that we love, because of all of the disparities in health that disproportionately affect the Black community. Like, there's so much extra high blood pressure and diabetes, and those are immediately going to get you, disqualified from being considered a donor.
Right.
And if it's at all a possibility, and it doesn't have to be from another Black person, folks need to understand that, like, kidneys do not have color. I mean, they're all pink, right?
Right.
So this is that whole thing about the race stuff too. Thank you, Cass, for putting black.village.org up there.
Okay. And then I also put in the chat the link, the YouTube link for Doc's page. So please go check out our videos. The first one I saw up there was talking about albumin, right, in your urine. And so you can watch the videos. Like, again, they're not long form videos, they're very short videos, and you can get that information that you need to arm yourself. So we're trying, information is power. And so what we're doing, that's why we're doing this show. We're doing this show. That's why she has her site. It's about getting you the information you need to have, so you can take power over any type of.
I'm so sorry. Did I lose you?
No, I still see you. You're good. Can you hear me?
I'm not hearing you. My husband was trying to FaceTime me, so I'm not hearing you at all.
Okay. So, I'm sorry. Wow.
I don't know what I need to do. I'm sorry. I'm not that gifted with this. Look at me. Bless my heart.
Yeah.
Still can't hear you. I didn't take the call, of course, but now I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, that's a challenge. It can be disruptive. So I'm gonna send her a text message. Yeah. That is the beauty. That's what happens when you have live shows. So, while we're waiting for Dr. Grubs to come back, so Yvonne, we're gonna ask the question about daisy chain donors to make sure that we get your questions asked. Michelle, Cass put in there, black.village.org. So I'm going to put it on screen again if you want to go talk about that. And I'll talk about that briefly. The reality is that Black doctors only represent about 3 to 5% of the doctors that are currently in practice. But the sad part about that is Black doctors represent about 25% of doctors that are expelled from their residency programs. And why is that important? The reason why that's important, as we bring back Dr. Grubs, the reason why that is important is because if you don't get through your residency program, you're just going to be a doctor with an MD that can't practice. And so when we're talking about 5% of the doctors that are representing 25% or more of the students that are getting put out of their residency program, and it's for frivolous things, items that are some of them are particularly cultural, that is a problem. And so that is why Black Doc Village is in existence, to talk about this problem of Black doctors getting through residency programs, because they can go through medical school. They went through 4 years of undergrad. They've gone through 4 years of medical school, Then they're entering their residency at the end of medical school, and then they get kicked out of residency. And now what do they do? And so that's why it's an issue. So we're not here to talk about that tonight, but I just want to make sure you go to Black Doc Village. Dr. Grubbs is passionate about that. That's another passion project of hers. It's actually what I do in my job now is trying to create the next generation and develop and train the next generation of Black doctors and increase the numbers that are out there, because we know all of the numbers support the fact that patients of color do better when they see Black doctors. And so that's really what it boils down to. So that's a good question. So Doc, I know it's off the side, but I know, can you hear are you back on? Can you hear?
I'm back on. I can hear you. Sorry about that.
So I was filibustering there for a minute, but Yvonne's asking a good question. How can those docs be supported when they're in their residency programs?
Okay, one minor correction. So 5% of resident physicians in this country are Black and account for 20% of dismissals.
20%.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, it's horrible, but it's not that bad. But so, and you know, I've personally talked to dozens of young people, and it's for things like, oh, you didn't get your chart signed within 24 hours, or you showed up late for clinic. Things that most of us are guilty of, but they don't penalize the white kids for that, and they call it lack of professionalism. So I have yet to hear a story about one of these young people putting a patient in harm's way, or hurting a patient. So when the white residents get punished for lack of professionalism, is for things like showing up impaired to work, or sexual harassment, or cursing out the nurses on the daily, right? So it's a disparity of what people what is happening to us in terms of supporting. It's really tough because as I was overhearing you say, Ellis, it happens to us at every stage. My own story was in part leaving UCSF because of this overreaction to something, and I won't get into it, but I was in a very different place. I was already double board certified in internal medicine and nephrology. I already had written a book. I was fine. But these young people, they have invested all this time. They have $250,000 of debt on average, and then they get kicked out at a point where many of them can't go on and be a doctor. I've seen some that have to completely start over. They have to change specialties. All of these things. It's hard to say how you can support young people, but if there's somebody in your life, I think there is so much shame that goes along with when these things happen. People start doubting themselves. They feel like something's wrong with them. They feel like they're stupid. But how could you be stupid when you did all of this, got through medical school and all of this? And it's really about in the environment that we're in. I think if you're actually a patient engaging with someone, it's important to let young people and their supervisors know how important it is for you to see that individual there.
Right.
I think for people who are trying to find a doctor just for themselves, and your health plan doesn't have anybody, then it's important to say, why aren't there Black doctors for me to choose from? We need some Black doctors in this network. So I think there's all kinds of ways that individuals can advocate. And I think most of the work is really at like a policy standpoint in terms of how the system allows these young people to be treated. And that's what I'm focusing on with Black Doc Village. And of course, every little dollar helps. If some ballers that are, I've been, really wishing for, a fairy godparent to bestow a couple of million on Black Dot Village so I can really get to work. And all of that. But check us out, do sign up, and we're definitely keeping people posted on the work that we're doing. And really, it's really getting the word out and bringing more attention to this issue. Because at the end of the day, yes, it's about these individual careers, but it's really about the Black community and the health of the Black community. So I'll
So
stop there.
I know we're coming towards the end of our time here and end of our hour, but there was a question from Yvonne. She's been rocking with us for most of this evening, but she wanted to ask. She had a question about daisy chain donors.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, could you talk to us briefly about daisy chain donors?
I didn't even know they had that name for it now, but so basically, so I donated directly to my husband. We were both type O. I can, mm, it doesn't matter. We were compatible. An O person can donate to anyone, but had I been, say, AB, then he wouldn't have been able to take my kidney. So when we do these paired donations, they find another couple, another donor recipient who aren't matched, and say, and they pair us up. So one person gives to your person, and you give to their person. And I haven't kept up on it that much, but the largest one I've heard of is like 9 pairs of donors and recipients, where everybody did this swap around so that all of these folks could get a kidney. And that's a beautiful thing. Takes a lot of coordination, and so I what I would say is, don't let not being a compatible blood type stop you from trying to be a donor. And I do think that we as Black people have to advocate more for ourselves, because I think the system, for whatever the reasons, tend not to think of things for us. So another reason for us to kind of insert ourselves, and definitely not have folks thinking that these cross race things won't work.
Well, you all have the power. So if you can be a living donor, you can sign up to be a living donor, or you can sign up and like when you go get your driver's license renewed, and it says, "Are you want to be an organ donor?" You can check yes, right? So in that faithful incident that it does happen, we understand it's called an accident for a reason, but you could be saving a life even if yours is lost as a result of the accident. You could be saving a life by donating an organ. I mean, and there's all type of organ donations, not just kidneys, but I've heard people getting their eyes donated, right?
One person can potentially improve, save up to 8 lives. And this gets back to the kind of distrust issue, where a lot of people feel like, oh, if I sign up to be a donor, then they're not going to work on me, or they're not going to work
Right.
on, they're not going to try to save me. And I get it. And at the same time, I feel like there has to be some faith in that not everybody that is working in these settings is going to be corrupt like that. And
Right.
yeah, but it's tough when you think about somebody at the end of life, and potentially, facing the notion of having to let them go. I would encourage people to think about how their spirit will carry on, in a way, in terms of, like, you would know that maybe your loved one helped somebody else live longer and better. It's never easy, but I encourage people. I've signed up to on with the DMV. I've signed up to be on the I forget the name of the group, but to like the bone marrow registry. They say they need more Black people. You can't match. I've been on it for 18 years. Nobody's called me yet, but I'm still on it, waiting to the opportunity to help somebody in that way.
So, Dr. Grubbs, I think you got an invitation to speak at a Kwanzaa celebration via Zoom on December 28th. So she said, this is from Susie. She said her mother recently passed, and passed when she had chronic kidney disease, stage 4. And so she's asking, and she said they're located in New Jersey, the People Organization for Progress. So I'm gonna let y'all figure that out offline. In terms of so, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Go
Um,
to my website and you can send a contact me. My website is thenephrologist.com.
got that. So yeah, so Susie, reach out to Dr. Grubbs directly, thenephrologist.com. Go to that, contact us, and then you can put that request there, and then y'all can correspond offline for that. So Judy is asking about finding a good doctor in New York for her son. I will say this, Judy, blackdoctor.org has a doctor search on the site itself. So go to blackdoctor.org, click on that doctor search. You can put in a zip code. You can kind of delineate your search and find a doctor there in New York. If you're having any additional trouble with that, you can email me directly. It's just ellis@blackdoctor.org, and I can also help assist you with that process. But start with our doctor search and then go for there. And the NMA is also, we're partnered with the NMA for our doctor database, and so those are all of there's a good number of Black doctors in there available for you and your son. So thank you for that, Judy. This has been a great show. It's been like I told Dr. Grubbs before the show, as was going on with my father, this has been cathartic for me because it's helping me kind of talk through this process. And it's served as a reminder of how important your health is. And so as we're wrapping up here, as the dog is starting to get a little bit
My
wet.
puppy is getting antsy. Sorry. I've got two of them. But
one of the things I will say that my good friend Dr. Michael Lenore used to say at the end of our programs, health is your number one asset, so protect it. Doc, you want to take us out?
Thank you again for having me, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. Oops.
All right, so we're going to be back again next month with another People's Nephrologist program. We're going to be answering your questions here on this program. Today was about health conversations. We're going to be talking all things kidney health here on this program. So check us out on a monthly basis. And in the meantime, and in between time, make sure you go to our YouTube page. That's the People's Nephrologist. Go to thenephrologist.com on our website, and then also, and she's trying to help Black doctors stay.
You got to say it all together. It's real kidney talk with the People's Nephrologist. It's like a pimp called Slipback. You got to say it all together.
Real kidney talk with the People's Nephrologist. I got to say it on there. Okay.
All together.
The link is in the comments. You can check that out there. That's good. We're leaving on a high note. Thank you, Cass Burns, for putting in Doc's website there in the comments. So they're all there, and I'm sure if you go on Facebook, it's all blue in there. So you just click the link, take it now that we're wrapping up the show. Go to those sites, follow her, subscribe, click that subscribe button on her YouTube page so you get that, and click the bell so you get notifications. All of that happens. Y'all know how YouTube works. I ain't got to tell you. Again, thank you so much. The dog's got to go out as that phrase. And again, I thank you all for joining us. Yvonne, Susie, Cody, Judy, all the folks that have been with us here this evening.
Thank you, everybody. Cass,
Michelle, all of the folks, James, thank you all for joining us. And we'll see you. Have happy holidays if we don't see you again. Have happy holidays. We'll see y'all next time here on Black.
Good night.